The scream caught in Sarah's throat as the massive lion emerged from the tall grass just 20 feet away. She clutched her 2-month-old son, James, tighter to her chest, her knuckles white against his tiny body. The wheelchair she was confined to had sunk into the soft earth of the savanna, rendering her completely immobile. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no one to hear her cries for help. The African sun beat down as the lion's amber eyes locked with hers. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, sweat mixing with the tears she couldn't hold back. Just hours earlier, she had been arguing with her husband, Mark, in their rented safari vehicle. This trip to Kenya was supposed to help them reconnect after James was born, a second honeymoon of sorts. Instead, it had only highlighted the growing distance between them. This was a mistake. All of it, Mark had spat, his eyes cold as he looked at her sitting in the passenger seat, their sleeping baby in her lap. You can't even walk anymore. What was I thinking, bringing you to Africa? The accident that had taken her ability to walk had occurred just weeks before she discovered she was pregnant. Mark had stayed by her side through the pregnancy, but Sarah had felt his resentment growing daily. This expensive trip was his idea, a last attempt to save their marriage, he'd said. But his patience had finally snapped on their third day in the nature reserve. I can't do this anymore, he had whispered, pulling the vehicle to a stop in the middle of nowhere. His voice was eerily calm as he stepped out, walked around to her side, and opened her door. Sarah thought he was helping her out for a photo opportunity. They had stopped at a scenic overlook, the sprawling savanna stretching before them. It wasn't until he had roughly transferred her to her wheelchair and grabbed their bags that she realized something was terribly wrong. Mark, what are you doing? Sarah had asked, confusion giving way to panic as he placed the sleeping James in her arms. Finding my freedom, he had replied simply before climbing back into the vehicle. The tires kicked up dust as he drove away, leaving her screaming his name until her voice was hoarse. That had been 4 hours ago. 4 hours of desperate wheeling through uneven terrain, trying to find her way back to the lodge. 4 hours of the blistering sun draining her energy and hope. 4 hours of her baby crying from hunger, heat, and discomfort. And now this, a male lion with a magnificent mane, regarding her with what seemed like curiosity rather than hunger. Sarah had heard that lions rarely attacked humans unless provoked or starving. But she knew better than to trust wildlife documentaries in this moment of life or death. Please, she whispered, though she knew the lion couldn't understand. Please, my baby needs me. James began to stir, his tiny face scrunching up. Sarah rocked him desperately, knowing his cries might trigger the lion's predatory instincts, but it was no use. James let out a wail that seemed to echo across the savanna. The lion's ears twitched at the sound. Sarah closed her eyes, curling her body around James as a shield. But the attack never came. When she dared to open her eyes again, the lion had moved closer, just a few feet away, its massive head level with hers as she sat frozen. Its warm breath reached her face as it sniffed the air. Impossibly, James had quieted. He stared up at the lion with wide, innocent eyes. The lion lowered its gaze to the child, then back to Sarah. There was an intelligence in those amber eyes she had never expected. Then, the lion did something that defied everything she thought she knew. It turned slightly and looked back the way it had come, then back at her as if trying to communicate something. When Sarah couldn't move, the lion took a few steps away, then stopped and looked back again. Was this lion trying to lead her somewhere? The thought was absurd. Yet, as the sun began its descent, Sarah knew they wouldn't survive the night alone. Without water, shelter, or protection, they would not see the morning. What choice did she have? Sarah took a deep breath and began to push her wheelchair forward, following the lion as it padded slowly through the grass, repeatedly looking back to ensure she was still behind. As the lion led her across the savanna, Sarah's mind raced. Perhaps it was leading them to water, perhaps to its pride. Or perhaps, and this thought was so wild she almost laughed aloud, perhaps the lion somehow understood their plight. The terrain became increasingly difficult. Sarah's arms burned with exertion, and blisters formed on her palms. Several times the wheels stuck, and she had to rock the chair violently. Each time, the lion stopped and waited, watching her with those intelligent eyes. The sun was sinking lower, painting the savanna in orange and gold. Sarah had been following for nearly an hour when they crested a small rise. Below them lay a depression where a small stream trickled through, surrounded by a thicker patch of trees. The lion paused at the top, looking back as if to ensure she understood. Water. Sarah breathed, her parched throat constricting at the sight. James had been whimpering for the past 20 minutes. The descent was treacherous. Sarah navigated her wheelchair down the incline with extreme caution. The lion watched her progress from the bottom. When she finally reached the stream, Sarah carefully positioned her chair and reached down to cup water. She moistened James's lips first, then her own. The water was silty but cool. The lion drank from the stream several yards away, keeping its distance yet remaining close. As the immediate desperation of thirst subsided, Sarah became acutely aware again. Night was approaching. The temperature was dropping. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to James, who had settled after receiving water. The lion finished drinking and moved toward a cluster of trees and dense brush near the stream. It stopped at the edge and looked back expectantly. Sarah hesitated. Every instinct screamed that following a predator into an enclosed space was suicide. Yet this lion had already defied everything. With trembling arms, she pushed toward the thicket. As she drew closer, she realized the vegetation concealed a small hollow beneath tangled roots, a natural shelter. The lion entered first, then emerged and stepped aside. Sarah peered inside. It was empty, save for dry leaves and tufts of fur. "I can't believe I'm doing this," Sarah muttered. The wheelchair wouldn't fit inside. Holding James securely, she lowered herself to the ground. Using her free arm, she pulled herself into the hollow. The exertion left her gasping. The hollow was larger than it appeared, with enough room to lie down. Sarah positioned herself so she could see out the entrance, where the lion had settled, its massive body partially blocking the opening. It lay with its back to her, facing outward. It dawned on Sarah with disbelief that the lion appeared to be standing guard. As night descended, the savanna came alive with sounds. Sarah huddled deeper, curled protectively around James. Despite her fear, exhaustion soon dragged her toward sleep. The last thing she saw was the silhouette of the lion, still vigilant. She awoke once during the night to growling. The lion was on its feet, its body tense. Beyond, in the moonlight, she glimpsed several shapes moving. Other predators. Her heart raced. The standoff lasted several minutes before the shapes retreated. The lion remained standing before eventually settling back down. When dawn broke, Sarah was awakened by James's hungry cries. She fed him, her own stomach cramping with hunger. The lion was gone from the entrance. Sarah felt a surge of both relief and abandonment. She dragged herself to the entrance. Her wheelchair was where she had left it. Carefully placing James on a soft patch, she began the arduous process of dragging herself back. Each movement sent pain shooting through her. By the time she reached the chair, sweat drenched her clothes. As she struggled to hoist herself up, a movement caught her eye. The lion was returning from the direction of the stream, and in its mouth, it carried something. A small gazelle, freshly killed. The lion stopped a few feet away, dropped its prey, and backed up slightly, its amber eyes fixed on her. "You brought food," Sarah whispered. The lion blinked slowly, then looked pointedly at the gazelle before retreating to lie down near the stream, its gaze never leaving her. Sarah stared. Hunger gnawed her insides. If she could just start a fire. Using all her strength, she pulled herself back into the wheelchair. She retrieved James and held him close as she assessed her surroundings. For the next hour, Sarah worked methodically, collecting kindling and firewood. She arranged a small fire pit. Creating sparks by striking stones was difficult. Her hands shook. After numerous attempts, a tiny ember caught. Sarah blew on it gently until flames appeared. Using a sharp stone, she awkwardly cut portions of meat from the gazelle. She cooked small pieces over the flames. The first bite was tough and gamey, but to her hungry body it was sustenance. The lion remained at a distance, always watching. After Sarah had eaten, it finally rose and approached the gazelle, dragging the remainder away. For 3 days, this strange coexistence continued. The lion would disappear for hours but always returned, sometimes with food, sometimes just to rest nearby. Sarah established a routine. On the morning of the 4th day, Sarah awoke to an unusual sound. Mechanical. Human. The whirring of helicopter blades. Her heart leapt as she frantically wheeled herself out, scanning the sky. There it was, a search helicopter. Here. Over here, she screamed. She hurriedly added green leaves to the embers of her fire, creating thick white smoke. The helicopter continued its path, then banked suddenly, changing course toward her. The lion rose to its feet as the aircraft approached. The sound grew deafening. Through the windshield, Sarah could see figures pointing down. The helicopter moved to a clearer area about 50 yards away. As it touched down, 2 men jumped out, crouching beneath the spinning rotors. They wore the uniforms of the Kenyan Wildlife Service. Mrs. Turner, one called out cautiously, his eyes fixed not on her, but on something behind her. Sarah turned. The lion still stood there, its posture tense, a low growl rumbling. "It's okay," she called. "This lion, it saved us. It's been protecting us." The men exchanged bewildered glances. "Mrs. Turner, your husband reported you missing. He said you were attacked by a lion, and he fled to get help," one explained. Sarah felt a surge of rage. "That's not what happened," she replied, her voice steady. "He left us here deliberately. And this lion," she gestured, "it saved our lives." The standoff continued. Then, as if making a decision, the lion turned and looked directly at Sarah. Those amber eyes held hers for a long moment. Then, with a flick of its tail, it turned and loped away into the savanna. Sarah watched it go, an unexpected grief tightening her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. The rescuers rushed forward. They checked her and James, amazed to find them relatively unharmed. As they helped her into a rescue stretcher, Sarah recounted what had truly happened. "In 30 years working with wildlife, I've never heard anything like this," one man said. "Lions don't protect humans. They don't bring them food. It's unprecedented." As the helicopter lifted off, Sarah looked down. In the distance, she thought she glimpsed a tawny shape moving through the golden grass. The story of their survival spread quickly. Wildlife experts were baffled. Mark faced criminal charges for endangerment and abandonment. The truth had come out, supported by evidence from the vehicle's GPS. 6 months later, Sarah returned to Kenya, to a rehabilitation center for lions. Her story had brought attention and funding to conservation efforts. She had established a foundation. Standing at the edge of a large enclosure, James secure in a carrier on her lap, Sarah watched a different pride lounging in the afternoon sun. She would never know for certain what had motivated that solitary male. Perhaps some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. "I don't know if you can hear me," she whispered to the winds. "But we're okay now, and I'm making sure your family is protected, too. Thank you for showing me that kindness can come from the most unexpected places."